August 12th, 30 BCE, Alexandria. Egypt, in a marble chamber overlooking the Mediterranean, a woman prepares to die. She is 39 years old. She has ruled Egypt for 21 years. She has commanded the wealth of nations. She has borne children to two of the most powerful men in Rome, and now she is about to destroy everything. Outside her palace walls, Roman legions wait. Their commander Octavian has demanded her surrender. He wants to parade her through the streets of Rome in chains. A living trophy. The ultimate humiliation. She will not give him that satisfaction. Within hours, Cleopatra seci Philopator, the last pharaoh of Egypt, will be dead. The Roman propaganda machine immediately went to work. They called her a seductress, a temptress who used her beauty to bewitch noble Roman men, a foreign witch who nearly brought Rome to its knees. For 2,000 years, history has repeated that story. Hollywood made movies about her legendary beauty. Shakespeare wrote tragedies about her doomed love affairs. But here's the truth they don't want you to know. Cleopatra wasn't beautiful. She wasn't a seductress. She didn't bewitch anyone. She was something far more. Dangerous. She was intelligent. Let's start with what you think you know. This is what Cleopatra actually looked like. Not Elizabeth Taylor. Not Hollywood fantasy, this face. A prominent nose. A firm chin. Liquid eyes. A face described by contemporaries as alive rather than beautiful. Roman historians wrote that her actual beauty was not so remarkable that none could be compared with her. In fact, they found her rather ordinary, dash-looking dot. So if she wasn't beautiful, how did she captivate two of Rome's most powerful generals? How did she rule Egypt for over 2 decades? How did she nearly change the course of Western civilization? The answer lies in something the Romans found far more threatening than beauty. Cleopatra was born in 69 BCE. Her childhood tutor was Philip, from whom she learned the Greek arts of oration and philosophy. During her youth, she presumably studied at the Museum, including the Library of Alexandria. The Library of Alexandria, the greatest repository of human knowledge in the ancient world. 700,000 scrolls. Every text, every scientific treatise, every philosophical work ever written. While other Ptolemaic royals partied and schemed, Cleopatra read. She studied. She learned. She studied geography, history, astronomy, international diplomacy, mathematics, alchemy, medicine, zoology, economics, and more. But here's what made her truly exceptional. Languages. Cleopatra knew ancient Egyptian, Greek, and the languages of the Parthians, Jews, Medes, Troglodytes, Syrians, Ethiopians, and Arabs. 7, possibly 8 languages fluently. She was the only member of her dynasty, the only one in 300 years to learn the Egyptian language. Think about that. Her family had ruled Egypt for generations. None of them bothered to learn the language of their subjects. Cleopatra did. She read hieroglyphics. She spoke directly to her people without translators. She understood their history, their religion, their culture. Contemporary Egyptian sources suggest that Cleopatra was loved among her people. Unlike her Ptolemaic forebears, who spoke Greek and observed Greek customs, Cleopatra identified as a truly Egyptian pharaoh. Cleopatra styled herself as the new incarnation of Isis, the most powerful goddess in Egyptian religion. This wasn't just theater. This was political genius. By positioning herself as a living goddess, she unified a fractured kingdom. She gave Egyptians a ruler they could believe in. She transformed herself from a foreign Macedonian Greek into the embodiment of Egypt itself. Under her rule, Egypt was the richest nation in the Mediterranean. She built up the Egyptian economy and used trade with Arab nations to bolster her country's status as a world power. But in 51 BCE, when she was 18 years old and had just inherited the throne, Egypt had a problem. Rome, the Roman Republic, was expanding aggressively, violently. One by one, independent kingdoms were falling. Egypt was rich. Egypt was weak. Egypt was next. Cleopatra understood what her predecessors had not. Egypt couldn't fight Rome. Egypt couldn't ignore Rome. Egypt had to use Rome, and to do that, she needed to understand how power worked in Rome. Rome, 48 BCE. The Republic was tearing itself apart. Two men, both claiming to be Rome's rightful leader, were locked in civil war. Julius Caesar, the brilliant general, the populist; the radical Pompey, the great, the establishment favorite, the Senate's champion. At the Battle of Pharsalus, Caesar won. Pompey fled. And by pure chance, or perhaps calculated desperation, he fled to Egypt. Pompey had been a political ally of Ptolemy XII, Cleopatra's father. He thought Egypt would offer him sanctuary. He was wrong. Ptolemy XIII, Cleopatra's younger brother and ruler, had Pompey ambushed and killed before Caesar arrived. Ptolemy's advisors thought this would please Caesar. They were idiots. Caesar was incensed. Pompey had been a Roman consul, a dignified enemy. This was an insult not just to Pompey, but to Rome itself. Cleopatra saw her opening. She was 21 years old. She'd been forced from her throne by her brother. She had no army, no money, no leverage. What she had was her mind, and she had information about Caesar. She knew he was middle-aged, politically savvy, and desperately needed Egypt's wealth to fund his wars. So, Cleopatra did something extraordinary. According to historian Plutarch, she had herself wrapped in a carpet, or, more likely, a laundry basket, and smuggled into Caesar's quarters in the palace. When the bundle was unrolled, there she was. Not as a supplicant, not begging, but as an equal, and she spoke to him. In his language, Latin, she explained the political situation. She outlined Egypt's value as an ally. She demonstrated her knowledge of Roman law, Roman politics, Roman ambitions. Cleopatra's intelligence and charm, not just her beauty, captivated those around her. Understand, this wasn't seduction. This was negotiation. Cleopatra's relationships with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony were primarily political alliances rather than purely romantic. Caesar got what he needed: Egypt's wealth, its grain supply, a stable Eastern ally. Cleopatra got what she needed: Rome's military backing to reclaim her throne. Shortly after the siege was lifted by reinforcements, Ptolemy XIII died in the Battle of the Nile. Cleopatra became sole ruler of Egypt. At 22, Cleopatra had a child in 47 BCE called Ptolemy XV Caesar, commonly known as Caesarion, who is generally accepted to be Julius Caesar's son. This child represented something extraordinary: a bridge between East and West, between Rome and Egypt, between republic and monarchy. For 4 years, the alliance held. Caesar returned to Rome. Cleopatra visited as his honored guest. She stayed at Caesar's villa, creating a scandal among conservative Romans. The Romans watched, and they worried. Caesar was already too powerful, too popular, too dangerous to the Republic. And now he had a foreign queen bearing his child. A queen who whispered in his ear. A queen who commanded unimaginable wealth. On March 15th, 44 BCE, Julius Caesar was assassinated. Cleopatra was in Rome when it happened. After Caesar's death, Cleopatra returned to Egypt. Her son, Caesarion, was put in a precarious position. She had lost her protector, her alliance. Her plan, Rome fell into civil war, again, and Cleopatra waited. After Caesar's death, Rome was carved up by three men. The second triumvirate, Octavian Caesar's adopted heir, 19 years old, ambitious, calculating, ruthless. Lepidest, the old general, respected, weak, ultimately irrelevant. And Mark Antony. Mark Antony was one of the members of the second triumvirate. He was Caesar's close ally and a renowned general. The empire was divided. Octavian took the west. Antony took the east when Antony arrived in Asia Minor. He summoned Queen Cleopatra to answer charges that she had aided his enemies. It was meant to be an interrogation, a reminder of who held power now. Cleopatra turned it into theatre. Mark Antony styled himself on Bacchus, the god of wine and celebration. So Cleopatra dressed as Aphrodite, the goddess of love, who was believed to have had relations with Bacchus. She sailed down the Nile on a brilliant barge with purple sails, being fanned by servants dressed as cupids. This wasn't vanity. This was stagecraft. Political theatre designed to overwhelm and impress. And it worked. Cleopatra began her relationship with Mark Antony in 41 BCE. Their relationship had a political angle. Cleopatra required Antony to secure her crown and maintain Egypt's autonomy, while Antony wanted access to Egypt's wealth and assets for 10 years. The arrangement worked. Brilliantly, Antony got Egypt's gold to fund his armies. Cleopatra got Rome's protection and expanded territory. They had 3 children together: Alexander, Helios, Cleopatra Selene II, and Ptolemy. In 34 BCE, Antony made a fatal mistake. During a ceremony known as the Donations of Alexandria, Antony proclaimed Caesarion to be Caesar's son, relegating Octavian, who had been adopted by Caesar as his heir, to legal illegitimacy. Cleopatra was hailed as Queen of Kings, Caesarion as King of Kings. Rome was scandalized. Antony had essentially declared that Caesar's biological son with an Egyptian queen superseded his adopted Roman heir. Octavian saw his opening. Octavian exposed Antony's will to the Senate, where he revealed how Antony had left all his money to his children by Cleopatra, where they would reign as monarchs over kingdoms. The propaganda was brilliant, and vicious Roman propaganda depicted Cleopatra as a seductress to undermine her political acumen and justify their own conquests. They painted her as a foreign temptress who had bewitched a noble Roman general. They claimed she used drugs and magic. They called her a whore, a witch, a threat to Roman civilization itself. It wasn't true, but it worked. In 32 BCE, the Roman Senate declared war not on Antony, but on Cleopatra. The war wasn't really about Cleopatra. It was about power, about who would rule Rome. But by declaring war on Egypt's queen instead of a Roman citizen, Octavian avoided the appearance of starting another civil war. Politically, genius; militarily, disaster for Antony and Cleopatra. By 31 BCE, the two sides faced off in Greece. Antony had 500 ships and 70,000 infantry. Octavian, with 400 ships and 80,000 infantry, arrived from the north. The place, Actium, a narrow strait on the western coast of Greece. The date, September 2nd, 31 BCE. What happened next has been debated for 2,000 years. Around noon, with both fleets facing each other on the sea, the wind came forcefully across, and Antony launched his ships toward Agrippa, hoping to turn his left flank and break the line. Agrippa's smaller and faster Liburnian ships outmaneuvered Antony's large and slow-moving quinquerry, and Agrippa's use of the harpax quickly sank 15 of Antony's ships. Cleopatra's ships, which contained the treasury, quickly passed through the gap in the battle line, followed by Antony's ships, which had been stationed on the right wing. Antony's reaction has baffled historians for ages. When he saw Cleopatra leaving, Antony immediately left his command ship and followed her with 40 of his own ships. After the flight of their commander, the remainder of Antony's navy was seriously demoralized and was defeated. Alexandria, August 30 BCE. Although they had suffered a decisive defeat at Actium, it was nearly a year before Octavian reached Alexandria and again defeated Antony. Octavian's legions surrounded the city. The outcome was inevitable. Antony, informed that Cleopatra was dead, stabbed himself with his sword. Before he died, another messenger arrived, saying Cleopatra still lived. Antony was carried to Cleopatra's retreat, where he died after bidding her to make her peace with Octavian. Mark Antony died in Cleopatra's arms. He was 53 years old. Cleopatra was now alone when Octavian arrived. She attempted to seduce him, but he resisted her charms. For the first time in her life, Cleopatra's strategy had failed. Octavian didn't want her wealth or her body. He wanted her humiliation. He wanted to parade the Queen of Egypt through Rome in chains, the ultimate symbol of Roman dominance over the decadent East. Cleopatra had spent her entire life controlling her narrative, shaping her image, wielding power through intelligence and strategy. She would not end as Octavian's trophy, rather than fall under Octavian's domination. Cleopatra committed suicide, possibly by means of an asp, a poisonous Egyptian serpent and symbol of divine royalty. The asp, the sacred cobra of Egypt, the symbol worn by pharaohs, the creature of Isis herself. If this is how she died, it was her final act of theatre, her final statement of power. I am Egypt. I am a goddess. I will leave on my terms. On August 12th, 30 BCE, Cleopatra VII died. She was 39 years old. Octavian then executed her son, Caesarion, annexed Egypt into the Roman Empire, and used Cleopatra's treasure to pay off his veterans. Egypt, the last great independent power of the ancient world, ceased to exist. It became a province of Rome. The Ptolemaic dynasty that had ruled for 300 years ended, and Octavian. In 27 BCE, he was awarded the title of Augustus by the Roman Senate. He became Rome's first emperor. The Roman Republic died with Cleopatra. The Roman Empire was born from her ashes. So here's the question: did Cleopatra destroy Rome? Or did Rome destroy itself, and Cleopatra simply revealed the cracks? Under her rule, Egypt was the richest nation in the Mediterranean and the last to remain independent from the rapidly expanding Roman Empire. She negotiated with Rome's most powerful leaders as an equal. She bore children who could have united East and West. She came within inches of creating a new world order. If Antony and Cleopatra had won at Actium, history would look completely different. Rome might have fractured. Egypt might have remained independent. The Mediterranean might have developed as a partnership of equals rather than under Roman domination. We'll never know, because they lost. But here's what we do know. In a world full of powerful people that were out to see her dead, Cleopatra was able to outsmart them all for decades. Medieval Arab texts praise Cleopatra for her accomplishments as a mathematician, chemist, and philosopher. She wrote works related to herbs and cosmetology. She fostered a cultural renaissance in Egypt, supporting poets, scholars, and philosophers. Alexandria became a vibrant center of intellectual and artistic innovation. Cleopatra didn't destroy Rome through seduction. She challenged Rome through intelligence, and Rome couldn't allow that story to survive, so they rewrote her, transformed her from a brilliant politician into a beautiful seductress, from a strategic genius into a lovesick fool. Cleopatra didn't destroy the most powerful empire on earth, but she came closer than anyone else ever did, and that terrified them so much. They spent 2,000 years making sure you'd remember her as everything she wasn't. So what do you think? Was Cleopatra a brilliant political strategist who nearly changed history? Or has she been misunderstood for 2,000 years? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more deep dives into the real stories behind history's most famous figures, hit that subscribe button, because the truth, it's always more interesting than the myth.